The year was 1867, and the Wyoming Territory breathed like a wounded animal beneath a cold spring rain, each gust of wind dragging shadows across the open plains. Night had settled heavy on the world, and the moon hid behind swollen clouds, as if afraid to witness what hunted beneath it. Ilera Hayes, 19 years old and barefoot, ran through the wet grass with a torn hem flapping at her knees and blood streaking from one ankle where she caught herself on barbed wire hours earlier. Every breath she took scraped her throat raw. Behind her, hoofs pounded. Men shouted. Lightning tore open the sky long enough to show their shapes. 3 riders, coats snapping like black wings, rifles glinting silver as death. Rain thickened. Mud clung to her steps. She stumbled, fell hard, hands sinking into freezing muck. She pushed up again, heart exploding against her ribs. Her lungs burned like fire, but she didn't stop, not when everything she'd ever known lay behind her in smoke and blood. Not when men paid to finish the job tracked her like hounds across the prairie. She ran until her legs trembled like reeds, until she tasted copper at the back of her tongue, until she heard something beyond the thunder. Hooves from a different direction. One rider. Fast. Closing. She tried to veer away, but her legs gave beneath her. Knees crashed into earth. Her vision blurred with rain. She raised her head just as lightning carved the world open again. A figure approached, tall in the saddle of a dark bay stallion. Slick coat whipped by wind, hat brim shadowing eyes sharp as cut obsidian. He came without hesitation, cutting across the plains like a blade. He reached her, leaned low, and extended an arm. "Up," he said, voice rough as stone underwater. No name, no promise, only command. Ilera grabbed for him, fingers slipping on wet leather, and he hauled her effortlessly into the saddle before she could breathe again. She clung to his coat, shivering. He turned the horse with a jerk and plunged into darkness. Shots cracked behind them. Muzzle flashes tore open the storm. Bullets hissed past, close enough to feel. The stranger bent low, shielding her with his body, one arm strong around her shoulders. "Hold on," he growled. She did. They rode until the shouts faded, until hooves behind them scattered across distance like dying thunder. When at last he slowed, they stood before a stand of pines, black silhouettes against a bruised sky. Through the trees glowed a cabin window, warm, alive, impossible. He dismounted first, lifted her down without effort. She wilted against him, barely upright. He guided her inside, where heat and lamplight melted the cold from her bones. The cabin smelled of wood smoke and coffee, saddle oil and worn life. Tools hung neatly on walls. Blankets stacked clean and folded. The stranger removed his hat, water dripping from its brim. His face was angular, stern but not cruel. Dark hair clung to his temples. A 3-day shadow roughened his jaw. Scars crossed his knuckles, and an old burn marked his wrist like a story never spoken. She guessed him near 28, though hardship carved older lines instead of his eyes. He brought warm water, placed it beside her, then knelt to bandage her ankle. His hands were steady as stone. She watched him, frightened but grateful, tears burning like shame at the corners of her eyes. "You don't even know me," she whispered. He tied the cloth firm. "Don't need to." Silence. Rain softened against the roof. Ilera tried to swallow the lump swelling in her throat. "Your name?" she asked. A beat of hesitation. Habit, not distrust. Colt Mercer. She repeated it in her mind like a rope tossed across deep water. He poured her coffee, set it in shaking hands. Warmth spread through frozen veins. Exhaustion yanked her downward like gravity. She lay on the cot near the hearth, meaning to stay alert, but sleep took her like a wave, leaving Colt alone with a crackling fire. She woke to metal sliding, the sound of danger, a rifle being loaded. Dawn barely broke through the cabin window, painting everything pale and cold. Colt stood near the door, jaw hard, gaze fixed on the ridge outside. She followed it, 3 riders again. But not just them. A 4th figure now. A badge glinting under the gray light. Sheriff Tolan. Mid-40s, broad mustache, boots heavy with law, or semblance of it. He rode forward with practiced authority while the men who chased her smiled like wolves that found cornered prey. Colt handed Alara a revolver. Cold weight, old memory. You know how to use it? He asked. Alara nodded. Barely. Her father taught her before everything burned. A knock like judgment rattled the wood. Colt opened the door halfway, rifle never wavering. The sheriff spoke as though verdict preceded trial. Alara Hayes, you're accused of theft and trespass against the McCain estate. You'll come peacefully. Alara stepped forward, revolver low but ready. Her voice trembled but held. I stole nothing. They killed my family. The scar-faced rider spat. Lies! Colt's voice cut sharp. She's under my roof. Not legally, Tolan answered. She has no husband, no kin, no standing. The words struck like chains. Alara felt herself shrinking. 19, alone, hunted by men who wanted her gone. She looked at Colt, searching for anchor, anything. He didn't look back. Not at first. He breathed slow, steady, then spoke with the weight of a door slamming shut. She's got a husband. Alara froze. As of now, Colt finished. Everything inside her broke open. Fear, disbelief, something dangerously like hope. The sheriff narrowed his eyes but couldn't argue law. We ride to town. Paper signed. Preacher present. Colt nodded. Not once did he ask Alara what she wanted. She followed only because the alternative was death with no name attached. Town woke slow as they arrived. Windows opening, murmurs rising like wind across a wheat field. Alara sat stiff behind Colt on the horse, every jolt reminding her she was breathing only because he'd spoken one sentence that cost them both more than price-setting coin. The church door stood open. Lanterns flickered gold against pine walls. The preacher waited with Bible in hand, brow creased with uncertainty. Colt stood beside her, tall as a wall built for storms. His coat still damp, jaw set like granite. Alara's hand trembled around wilted flowers someone shoved into her grasp. Captain of her fate one night, keeper of it the next. Words passed like distant thunder. Vows spoken. Ring slid onto her finger. Cold metal, unexpected weight. Colt's hand brushed hers once, warm and rough, almost apologetic. She didn't speak. Couldn't. When it ended, she was wifed by law. Protection born not from love but necessity, a chain both meant to save and bind. Sheriff Tolan tipped his hat stiffly. You bought her time, Mercer. Nothing more. The riders glared, silent threats thick as bramble. Colt mounted, offered his hand. She hesitated, met his eyes, storm dark, unreadable. Why? She asked. Voice small as dying flame. He answered like truth forged in hardship. No one deserves to die alone. With those words, they rode toward a future neither understood. But dawn waited, and danger rode behind them like shadow too close to outrun. The air outside the church tasted like cold tin and unsettled earth as Alara Hayes stepped into the pale morning light beside Colt Mercer, her pulse still ticking like a loose wagon wheel on a rough road. The ring felt heavy, not precious metal, but iron forged into a promise she'd never agreed to nor dreamed of wearing. People gathered on the boardwalk, whispering into the stiff Wyoming breeze, every gaze sharp enough to peel skin. Colt stood steady, jaw tight, hat low, the kind of man built to bear storms without shifting. He was 28 with sunbitten skin, eyes shadowed by old wars no one asked about, coat damp, boots firm in dust, as though every plank beneath him belonged to his stride. Alara, 19 and newly bound to a stranger, did not feel rooted at all. She felt like the wind could take her as she loosened her hold on herself for even a heartbeat. She mounted the horse ahead of Colt this time, surprising herself with steadiness she did not feel. He swung up behind her, and they rode out of town under an uneasy silence. The road stretched long and pale beneath a sky washed weak by daylight. Birds scattered. Wool tracks cut through wet soil, leading them toward the foothills where the Mercer Ranch lay tucked between rock and pine like a stubborn idea. Alara's fingers twisted the ring unconsciously, metal cold against her skin, a reminder that her life now sat in the hands of a man who'd spoken for her when the world tried to swallow her whole. Colt's voice eventually broke the quiet, rough yet careful, as though words might bruise if handled wrong. You saved yourself first. I only gave you somewhere to land. She looked ahead, not turning. Landing doesn't mean standing. What do you need to stand? She thought of firelight on dead faces, of her father handing her a revolver with callous love, of screams caught beneath smoke. A reason, she whispered. The only answer for some miles was the creak of leather and the rhythm of hooves on rising ground. Grass waved like slow-dying flames in the wind. The land breathed, unhurried and unforgiving. They reached a ranch near noon, a cabin, a battered barn, a corral holding 2 soromaras, and an old mule who blinked at them with disapproving patience. Beyond the fence stretched pasture cut by a lazy stream, spring water glittering among reeds and stones. Inside, the air still held last night's warmth. Colt dismounted first, offered a hand. This time she took it without thinking, then regretted the ease of it. He saw too much she didn't say. She kept her chin high, bearing the weight of his gaze like another saddled his shoulder. "You'll have a room," Colt murmured, placing her bag, a borrowed satchel, on a trunk near the hearth. "Not the cot. Not anymore." "You owed me nothing beyond a night shelter," she replied. His eyes, darker than storm-soaked pine bark, flicked toward the ring on her finger. "I owe you more than burial under false accusation." Before she shaped retort, thunder of hooves broke across the yard. Colt stiffened, hand going to the rifle propped against the wall. Ilera followed to the window. 3 riders once again, like wolves who never left tracks for long. But this time they wore smirks carved deep enough to draw blood. Their presence struck tension through the cabin, like lightning across dry timber. Colt met her eyes. "Stay behind me." The door swung open to cold wind and colder intentions. The lead rider, a long-jawed man named Briggs, perhaps mid-30s, eyes like broken flint, rested a hand casually on his holster, as though he didn't need to draw first to be first to kill. "Heard you got yourself married," Briggs drawled. "Quick work. Shame you didn't wait long enough for us to offer condolences first." Colt stepped forward, voice low and measured. "You come to talk or bleed?" Briggs smiled like a cut waiting to happen. "We come with fair notice. The McCain estate wants the girl. Ring don't change truth, she's a thief." Ilera stood straighter, anger burning through fear. "I stole nothing. Your men murder my family." Briggs's grin thinned. "That's the kind of talk gets folks buried." Colt's rifle rose like dawn. "Not today." It was enough. The riders backed away with promises curdled by spite, but no gunfire followed. Not yet. Dust rose behind them like ghost smoke from a home long gone to ash. Ilera's breath trembled, but her spine did not bend. She shut the door, fingers tight around the revolver Colt had given her. "You put yourself between me and the noose," she said quietly. "Whether I ask or not, I see it." Colt rested the rifle on the table. "I don't do regrets when they save lives." She held his eyes then a beat too long, before turning to fix her torn hem, though her hands shook all the while. Days passed like horses crossing endless plain, each step measured, tense, never without distance behind or danger ahead. The weather turned sharp, wind slicing through morning haze with teeth of frost, though spring should have softened it. Colt set her to small tasks at first, fetching water from the stream, sewing torn saddle girths, learning the rhythms of a ranch that survived more through stubborn grit than fortune. He spoke little, but when he did, his words carried weight like iron forged in fire. Ilera learned that silence with him wasn't absence. It was a shield he used to hold back ghosts that wanted speaking. One evening, under a sky turning violet, he placed a rifle in her hands proper and stood behind her at the corral fence. His voice was steady like river rock. "You shoot to end threat, not start it. Every bullet must mean something." She raised the rifle, feeling its weight, memory pressing like hands on her back. She inhaled slow, sighted a tink in atop a post, exhaled, squeezed. The shot cracked across pasture. The kin toppled. Colt nodded once, approval so subtle it struck harder than any praise. "You learn fast." "I had to," she said softly. He didn't ask details, didn't press where wounds lay. Instead, he handed her another bullet. She took it, fingers brushing it just briefly. Too brief, yet enough to strike something unspoken like flint against steel. As days unfurled, Ilera's strength returned. Her ankle healed beneath careful wrapping. She rode with Colt to mend fence lines, helped drive cattle from rocky slopes, even laughed once when Colt's mule chased a chicken with more determination than sense. At night they sat by fire, silence between them no longer sharp, but shaped like understanding. Unfinished, fragile, growing. Yet threat never strayed far. Tracks appeared near pasture one morning. Fresh, deep, not belonging to their horses. Colt followed them to where forest thickened. 3 sets of hooves. A 4th boot print pressed beside. Watching. Waiting. They returned to the cabin, neither speaking what they both knew. They were being circled like injured prey. By the week's end, the enemy moved. It came with rifles cracking through darkness, window glass shattering like frozen stars. Colt grabbed her arm and pulled her down. Bullets chewed the log wall. Horses screamed outside. Flames licked haystack behind barn. The world became fragments. Heat, smoke, gunfire. Colt's voice cutting through chaos. Ilara, rifle behind the stove. Her hands remembered before her mind did. She crawled through shattered wood, grabbed the weapon, loaded trembling but sure. Colt kicked open the back door. She followed, heart drowning in thunder of gunshots. The night burned orange with fire, barn roof glowing like rising hell. 2 shooters advanced from the tree lean. Colt fired once, one fell. Ilara took aim at the second, breath tight. Her finger tightened. Shot rang. The man stumbled, clutching shoulder, fled into dark. Smoke thickened. Embers fell like dying stars. Colt reached her, lifting her scarf to cover nose and mouth. We hold until they regroup, or we don't live past dawn. She nodded, voice gone. Fear lived in her bones, but so did resolve now sharpened by loss and something newer. Belief that survival meant fighting alongside the only man who'd stood when law turned its back. They patrolled the property till sunrise. Flames dying to black skeleton timbers. Sky bruised purple with approaching day. When quiet came, it was too fragile to trust, like peace offered by rattlesnake teeth. Exhausted, they slumped inside, ash clinging to skin. Colt handed her water. She drank slow, eyes meeting as across bruised morning silence. Something heavy uncoiled inside her, something like belonging, unwanted yet inevitable. 3 days later, while checking traps by the river bend, laughter spilled from her without warning, when Colt slipped on slick rock and caught himself with a curse fit to Blister's Sunday sermon. He glared half-heartedly, then to her shock, smiled back, not wide, not careless, but real, like sunlight pushing through storm break. "You think that's funny?" he challenged. "A little," she admitted. They shared stillness, then not awkward, but simple, like a bridge built plank by plank without notice. The river murmured cold secrets over stones, cottonwoods trembling in soft wind. She knelt to refill canteen, yet awareness of Colt near her thrummed like heat beneath winter coat. He crouched beside her, handing flint stick. Fingers brushed, brief, electric. She didn't move away. Neither did he. But peace in their world lasted only long enough to miss when broken. A rifle cracked from across the river. Water erupted beside Colt's boot. Ilara didn't think. She shoved him down, grabbed rifle, rolled to cover behind boulder as more shots shattered calm like glass under hammer. She sighted movement on opposite ridge. 2 men, and a third coaxing horse forward with rifle leveled carelessly in her direction. Hat brim familiar. Briggs. Colt fired first. Ilara fired second. Echoes rolled across valley like thunder returning for dues unpaid. The riders retreated, not defeated but warned. Breath shaking. Colt faced her. Pride, surprise, and something dangerously warm lit his eyes. "You saved my life." She swallowed. Only fair trade. They rode home with no more words needed. Fence lines seemed sharper. Shadows stretched longer. The world had changed again, but this time not only by fear. Something else lived now between them. Fragile yet rooted deeper each day, like seed determined to grow through stone. At dusk they returned, shared meal of beans and hard bread, without ceremony. He poured her coffee, steam rising sweet and bitter. She traced rim of tin cup, studying the man before her. the way burdens shaped his shoulders, the way he watched the horizon as if past might ride out of it any moment. She wanted to know the ghosts that carve him. She feared knowing too much. He spoke first. Marriage wasn't choice. It was shield. She nodded, but a shield is carried only if worth protecting. His gaze met hers, steady as iron. You are. Silence beat between them like slow drum. She felt heat climb her throat, but held steady, refusing to shrink beneath truth, offered plain. Night deepened. Stars burned hard in black vault sky. They stood at doorway, watching Pasha breathe in silver light. Wind shifted, cold warning alive. The riders would return. She knew. Colt knew. But now she wasn't girl running barefoot in storm. She was woman who'd fired rifles, stood in flames, chosen stay. She glanced at Colt, hand brushing his. Not accident. Not apology. Choice. He didn't pull away. And somewhere out in the dark, Hove stirred again like fate circling. Dawn crawled over burned horizon like a wounded animal, slow and raw, and Alara Dunn felt as if her own bones carried the same trembling exhaustion. The wildfire had died behind them, leaving only ash-blackened trees and the stench of smoke that clung to skin like guilt. James Carter rode with his jaw set, eyes narrowed against the red haze of morning, but sweat trickled down his temple, and his breathing betrayed the pain he refused to speak aloud. He had taken an arrow to the shoulder in the chaos of the night before, and though he claimed he could ride through hell itself without slowing, Alara saw the truth in the way his hands sometimes faltered on the reins. The horse, lathered and trembling, carried them through a narrow ravine toward the riverlands, where green still survived despite the fire's hunger. Birds called weakly, like souls returned to bodies after a long fight. Alara pressed her palm softly to James' back, feeling the heat of fever beginning to take him, and she whispered his name, asking if he could hear her. He did not answer. He only pushed deeper into mourning, as if something ahead dragged him forward with the cruel insistence of duty. When they reached the river crossing, wide, cold, silver bright, James finally swayed. He gripped the saddle horn but nearly toppled, and Alara caught his shirt just in time to keep him upright. She slid from a horse and helped him down, boots splashing into the shallows. He grimaced but held steady, and together they led the horse into the icy water, the current tugging at hems and flesh as if eager to pull him away. On the far bank stood a homestead, weather-beaten boards, a long porch sagging at one side, a white-painted rocking chair creaking gently in the morning breeze. Smoke curled from a chimney, a living sign after so much death. Alara's breath caught. She felt hope, small but stubborn, lighting inside her chest like a spark seeking fuel. James staggered, dropping to one knee, and she knelt beside him, lifting his face with trembling fingers. "We have to stop." "You need help," she said, voice raw from ash and fear. He shook his head, grit firm beneath exhaustion. "No stopping. The men chasing us won't quit. That fire didn't take them. It only slowed them." His eyes met hers, steady and dark. "We go inside, but don't trust what you see. Folks out here, they don't give kindness free." Alara nodded, though doubt trembled inside her. Every path ahead tasted like danger. Every choice felt soaked in consequences that would brand them both. They knocked at the homestead door, and an old man answered, narrow-shouldered, gray-bearded, eyes sharp as river glass. A rifle leaned against the table behind him, close to reach. He studied James, then Alara, then the horse with its singed mane. "You bring trouble?" he asked, voice dry and flat as dust. Alara swallowed hard. "We bring need, and if help comes kind, we won't forget it." The old man stared long, until silence ached. Then he stepped aside. Inside, before the ones behind you find this place first. The homestead felt warm, too warm. The stove crackled alive, and dried herbs hung from rafters, filling the air with sharp scent. James lowered himself into a chair, shaking with exhaustion, and the old man fetched whiskey and boiled water. He cut the arrowhead free from James' shoulder, and James bit leather, refusing to scream. Alara held his hand, tears stinging her eyes when he finally sagged into unconsciousness. Hours passed slow. She washed his blood from her fingers, but it stained deeper than skin, the kind of red that lived beneath ribs in memory. She watched him sleep, breath thin, lips dry. The old man leaned against the table, studying her with eyes that saw more than she wanted to reveal. "You love him," he said plainly. Ilara almost denied it, almost, but the truth felt like a weight that wanted release. "I don't know," she whispered. "I owe him. I fear him. I trust him. And I fall more every mile we ride." The old man nodded once, slow. "The world out here don't give time for slow feelings. It burns fast. It scars quick. If you want him alive, you'll have to choose which part of him you stand with, the man running or the man fighting." Before she could answer, gunfire cracked across the river, sharp, close. Horses thundered. Voices cut through the air like blades. Ilara felt cold race up her spine. The Hun had found them. She snatched James' revolver, though her hands shook. She threw his arm across her shoulder, dragging him upright. The old man barred the door, rifle ready, eyes steady. Outside, hoofbeats drew closer, like storm drums. "We ride." James croaked, half awake, voice broken. Ilara nodded, heart wild. A decision formed inside her with brutal clarity. She would stand with him. Not as prisoner, not as debt, but as woman choosing danger over safety, hope over surrender. They burst from the homestead side door, horse waiting, breath steaming and cold. Ilara hauled James into the saddle and swung up behind him. Bullets tore splinters from porch pillars. She kicked the horse hard, and they flew into open land again. River behind them, death in pursuit ahead. And so began the last ride. The day sharpened into noon, like a blade honed for killing. The land stretched wide, golden grass, distant bluffs, sky harsh and clean. James leaned forward, jaw clenched though fever burned him bright as wildfire. Ilara kept an arm around him, steadying him whenever wind or weakness threatened to take him. Behind them, 5 riders gained ground, dust plumes rising in columns like smoke signals to the heavens. They reached the high plateau where the old military fort once stood. Stone walls broken, cannons rusted, history bleeding through every crack. If they held the high ground, they might survive. If not, they would die with wind singing their last rites. Ilara helped James dismount, legs near failing beneath him. "Stay awake," she pleaded, gripping his collar. He gave a faint smile, wolfish despite pain. "I'm awake enough, long as you're here." The words struck her deeper than bullets. They pulled crates to form a barricade inside the ruins. James reloaded with shaking fingers. Blood spotted the dry earth. Ilara loaded spare rounds, breath shallow, pulse savage. She could feel death riding toward them, not as enemy but as witness. The first outlaw crested the hill with a shout, rifle raised. Ilara fired, shot clean, fast, instinct more than thought. The man tumbled from his horse, dust blossoming like dry rain. She felt no triumph, only necessity. The second man charged harder, and James fired twice. Both bullets found ribs. The horse reared, rider falling like broken scripture to the dirt. But 3 more remained, and they spread like wolves circling wounded prey. James slumped head low. Ilara seized his face, forcing his eyes open. "You stay alive. Do you hear me? Stay." He breathed one word through clenched teeth. "With you." The attackers flanked left. Ilara rolled behind a crumbled stone wall. Firing again. She grazed one rider, but not enough to stop him. Gunfire ripped through crates, splinters showering. James forced himself upright, firing one-armed, face white as bone. Another outlaw dropped, but the last 2 pressed forward, relentless. One reached the ruins, leaping over fallen stone. Ilara met him at close quarter, pistol empty. She swung the gun into his jaw, felt bone crack beneath steel. He slammed her against the wall, hand at her throat. She gasped, vision sparking. His breath stank of whiskey, cruelty, and she saw her death in his eyes, unless she became something sharper. She drove her knee into his ribs and grabbed his drop knife, plunging it once, twice, until his body slackened and folded into dust. Wind howled through the ruins, cold against sweat. Ilara staggered back to James, chest heaving. Only one outlaw remained, the leader, broad-shouldered, dead-eyed, riding with hate like armor. He dismounted slow, deliberate, each step echoing finality. James tried to stand but collapsed to one knee. Illyra raised her pistol, though it held no round, but the man smiled, knowing. He leveled his revolver at James' heart. Should have died in the fire. His voice flat as gravel. Illyra moved before thought existed. She stepped between bullet and man, arms spread, face carved in certainty. If he dies, I die first. The outlaw cocked the hammer. Then James, with the last strength left in soul and sinew, tackled him to the ground. The gun fired wild, echoing through ruin like thunder. Dust rose. Struggle tangled. Illyra grabbed the fallen revolver discarded earlier, one round left. She aimed through tears and fear and fire. The outlaw lifted a knife toward James' throat. Illyra pulled the trigger. Silence followed, heavy, consuming, sacred. James slumped back, chest rising barely. Illyra fell to her knees beside him, the gun clattering away. Blood soaked the ground, but his eyes opened, slow, soft. Finding hers like a compass, seeking north. "You chose," he whispered. She gripped his hand, fierce. "I did." They stayed there beside, cooling stone, breathing survival like prayer. The wind carried smoke away. The world, against all odds, held them both in one more dawn. And the frontier, merciless and vast, witnessed a woman and man bound not by force, but by choice, a choice carved in gunfire, sealed in blood, and carried forward into whatever future dared arise. Whatever came next, they would face it together.